Hi everyone and welcome back to an interview with where I interview all types of creators, whether they're a YouTube, a Twitch streamer, a comic book writer or a toy photographer. I have a toy photographer here with me today that I met at a convention just at the end of last year. I'm really excited to talk more with and find out what kind of persuaded and got him into this side of photography. But before we get to the questions, Andy, do you just want to give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy. I've been doing toy photography for around about 6 or 7 years now. I've been doing wedding photography for about 12 years, photography in general for about 15 years. And yeah, I get such a kick out of just, creating stuff, creating fantastic images.
Okay, so the first question is, what inspired you to do toy photography?
That's a very good question, Chris. I have always been into my art, but I've never been good at drawing art. Hence why I went into photography to be able to do some sort of art. I think it was in 2016 or 2017, my mate said to me, do you want to come to meet some Star Wars, buffs and people that have been in the original films at London Comic Con? And I was like, I don't really know much about London Comic Con, but it sounds quite geeky, I'm a bit of a geek myself, but yeah, I was a little bit nervous about going to it. So the thought of toy photography was, not even on my thoughts, So we went along to London. I lived in Reading at the time, and half an hour to get there. We got into London Comic Con, and I was just totally inspired by all of these people that just had their stands selling wacky stuff, artwork, toys, loads of Star Wars products, and all the latest stuff, all the latest programs. And I walked out after about 5 or 6 hours of being there, and I thought to myself, I could do something like this. I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
Me and the wife went on holiday. We went to Marrakesh. I'm laid there in the sun, just like stewing about it. What can I do to go to these conventions? Not just London, Reading Comic Con, anywhere, Gloucester Comic Con, Bristol, anywhere. I'm laying there for like, I don't know, a good couple of days, and then suddenly it comes to me. I could do something that is quite a big thing at the moment, or has been for the last 10 years, but how can I make it different? Vintage toy photography. And it just kind of came to me while I was like laying there in the sun, sipping on a mojito. So, but my wife didn't really engage with me for the week because I was too engrossed in like coming up with these crazy ideas for when I get back home,
Yeah.
So yeah, London Comic Con inspired me just by meeting so many people with their own stalls selling crazy stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, from what I've got, obviously the convention that I've been to, it does kind of shock me a little bit of, Reading Comic Con that has just gone. Did you see the women selling stained glass window?
Yes, I did.
Things. Yeah. They were really good, and
really
I'd never seen that at a convention before, and they were quite, especially the Doctor Who ones. I quite like them.
Yeah.
So obviously you're going on about the vintage toy photography. How do you choose what toys to shoot with?
Yeah. Well, initially, I started off. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, so I started off with Star Wars toys, the vintage range. Going back to like the late 70s, and it was all about, for me, going back then. It was like, oh, I've got to do Boba Fett because he's like the most popular one. I've got to do Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've got to do Darth Vader. And as I create these images over time, you think, do you know what? Star Wars is such a retro, intense movie. There's lots of people out there that they like Boba Fett, but they like other characters like Greedo. Greedo's a massive character, but he's so there's lots of other characters that are so inspiring than just your typical Boba Fett or Obi-Wan or Luke, or Darth Vader. So I'm trying to create more images with the less bigger characters. But yeah, it started off with the bigger characters initially when I first started.
Okay. So, what kind of process do you go through when you're obviously, about to do a shoot and you've say you've selected your figure and everything like what's the creative process after that?
Yeah, so um, luckily, like I said, I've got like a bit of history with using a camera, so that was my advantage. So I knew to use a tripod. Um, the process is, it sounds a bit sad, but I sit in more or less a dark room with my
Yeah.
backgrounds, tripod, obviously camera on the tripod with a remote. I can use smoke machines as well. Um, but it's all about focusing on the subject's eyes. If you're not focusing on the character's eyes, it doesn't quite make sense. You know, the
Yeah.
photograph won't make sense. When you get it printed, it's like there's something wrong, there's something wrong. But if you get the eyes in focus every time, you're off to a winner.
Okay. So, do you have like a favorite backdrop or a favorite toy that you like to shoot with?
Uh, there isn't a favorite toy. There isn't a favorite backdrop because it changes all the time. But
Mm.
I would say a favorite line would be the Kenner toys from the
Yeah.
1990s.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you use the newer vintage line as well?
I don't use the newer vintage line, but I do use the Black Series, so the modern
Okay. Yeah.
Star Wars figures, and the Marvel figures as well.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm starting to use the Star Trek line as well. You've got the
Oh,
Remco,
nice.
Karate Kid. Um, so yeah, it's not just Star Wars because I like to be creative and I like to offer my services to the wider audience.
Yeah.
Um, because I want to sell my images and I want to make a bit of money from it as well.
Yeah.
So I have to broaden out my horizon.
Okay. So, with obviously with going on that, and you said obviously got you use camera, tripod, and backdrops. What other equipment do you use with your
Oh,
photography?
well, good question. I got out a couple of bits. This
Okay.
is called an this is called an ice light. It looks like a lightsaber. It's one of the reasons why I bought it. But no, on a serious note, when I was doing wedding photography, I used this quite a lot for like portraits for the bride, and it works really, really, really well with toy photography. It's called a
Okay.
Jerry Gianolis. I hope I pronounced that right. He's a world-class wedding photographer. He creates some fantastic stuff. And he's endorsed the Westcott ice light. I will turn it on, and what it's supposed to do is kind of mimic natural light.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so if you are going to do any toy photography, get one of these. Get some barn doors as well. Set your camera to daylight, and the images will come out a lot more naturally. So instead of just putting the ice light, which is going to kind of blur everywhere,
Yeah.
you put the barn doors on, and it offers you a little bit more direction over the toys. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have a lot more control over what you're photographing. You have a lot more control over the light. You're able to kind of bend light and create contours and create shadows,
Yeah.
making the image look a little bit more realistic. Because when you say to people, "Yeah, I photograph toys," you don't just put the camera on the tripod and take pictures. For
Yeah.
me, it's about creating that nostalgia, that those memories of certain scenes in the films, and not just taking photographs of a bit of plastic. It's about kind of making the toys or the action figures look realistic, but at the same time
Yeah.
having that kind of familiarity of the toys from when you were kids.
Yeah.
So I've got that. I've got my Canon 5D Mark III. That's what I use for wedding photography. So I get some really beautiful cameras and beautiful images in low light situations. What else have I got? Got a smoke machine, and to be honest, it's not a lot because I don't use a lot of Photoshop at all.
Yeah.
I enhance my images just by sharpening them. You know, I'm a bit lopsided, so sometimes I'll straighten my photographs as well, and enhance the colors. But otherwise, I don't use a lot of Photoshop at all. It's all just the camera, tripod, my little special light, and my smoke machine.
Okay. So, obviously, that kind of goes into the next question. Is that obviously with the lighting, do you mainly just use the ice light for the lighting? And
Yeah, I do. It's just to get those shadows and contours, really. But I do use just a simple lamp with either
okay.
blue or red, orange, different sorts of colors to add a bit more drama to the images.
Yeah.
Again, it's trying to make those images pop and make them look realistic without
Yeah.
making them look too much of just a toy, toy with a cool background. So yeah, I use a lamp with different sort of colors in.
Okay. Are there any challenges that you face when it comes to like your photography?
Uh, yeah, there's loads of challenges. My most recent one is doing this character here, which I'm really sorry. I am a massive Star Wars fan, but I think his name is 8DB or something like that. I can't quite
I
remember. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know.
I,
No.
I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, so
Yeah. Well, this character is in the film for like 2 or 3 seconds. He's
okay.
torturing somebody. He's torturing another droid. And one of my challenges was recreating a scene where this kind of this I don't know what you want to call it. This what is it when they call it when you stamp a cow?
Oh, it's like a yeah. I know
Yeah,
what you're on about.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But this character is dropping down this thing onto this other droid's feet, burning his feet, or stamping his feet. And I was thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to make this look realistic? You know?
Mm,
So I thought about it and thought about it, and I had this metal rod which is in my garden, which has just kind of been laying in the corner, and I've got some pyrotechnic uh, matches. So I sellotaped that to the metal rod, dropped it down out of the scene, and lit the match, and created this kind of beautiful flame that was going to come down and stamp this droid's foot. Unfortunately, I dropped the match. I dropped the match beside the bowl, and it fell on the floor and burnt a bloody hole in my carpet. And
oh no.
yeah, so so that my wife was not too happy at all. I don't think she talked to me for about 24 hours. But
Oh
but yeah, I come up with stuff like that all the time, and it's about just trying to do justice to that photograph, you know,
yeah.
and not just thinking of a quick scene and just taking a picture. There's a lot of thought process that goes behind it, and sometimes it could be like 6 months before I suddenly think, that's what I could do. That's how I can get over that situation,
Yeah.
So a lot of thought goes
Okay.
into it.
Yeah, I can kind of I can see why it does take a long time. Because obviously you've got to think of said how to make it realistic and how you're gonna end up
Yeah,
incorporating that into the shot and try not to burn a hole in the carpet at the same time.
it's right next to me. It's right next to me.
Uh, do you have any favorite techniques or tricks for capturing dynamic and engaging shots?
Yeah, absolutely. Save up a bit of money and buy like a Westcott light. Get a smoke machine. They don't cost a lot of money. Watch videos. There's loads of people out there. There's one guy called Sir Dork, who's really cool, really into his pyrotechnic photographs with toys. Um, So watch loads of YouTube videos. Don't always use the most shallow f-stop. If you're into your photography, you'll know what that means. Try not to blur out the background too much, because then
Yeah,
you've just got a blurry background. You know, use quite a high f-stop to bring in the background into focus. And always, always, always zoom in on the eyes before you take the photograph. Get the back of your camera onto the video mode. Zoom in and use manual focus on the eyes of the toy that you're taking a picture of. It makes such a big difference. If the eyes aren't in focus, the picture's just not going to look right at all. Because when you look
yeah,
at photograph, any sort of photograph, the first thing you look at are the eyes.
yeah.
If the eyes are out of focus, it just won't work. But they're my top tips, really.
Okay. And how do you think about the storytelling with the figures? Obviously, you try to make them as realistic, and obviously, if they're from this specific scenes, you try to
Yeah,
recreate that as much as possible. But is there any other ways you go about trying to, make it and make the storytelling, and so you
yeah,
don't need to really know the scene all too well, that you see that and you're like, oh, actually, yeah, I do remember that scene now.
yeah, absolutely. I get people coming up to me at like conventions, and just like just coming up to my tables and just going, "Wow, that's that's good stuff, man." You know, and you should see them walking over to my table. Their eyes kind of brighten up and they have a big smile. And sometimes, a lot of the time, they will come over to me and chat to me about, you know, my photographs and how it reminds them of their childhood. And some people come up and just kind of snigger and walk away and, you know, whatever. But I think for me, it's about, yeah, it is more about knowing the characters and knowing a little bit
Yeah,
more about their backstory. Some of the characters I photograph, like I said to you earlier, are in the shot for like a second. You know,
yeah,
that 8BD character was in the film for like 10 seconds. Um, Other characters as well kind of inspire you. So if you have a character, you can stick in some familiar characters into the background. Um, that kind of creates a bit of storytelling. But yeah, it's quite a tough question to answer. That. Yeah,
yeah. I
sorry, Chris.
think
That's a bit of a
because
tough question to
yeah,
answer.
no, that's because I think you're saying about obviously people coming over and you got you they engage with you about obviously like seeing your stuff. Well, I think that happened with like me and you. That's how I
Yeah,
kind of I think there was one. I think it was a turtles shot that
yeah, that
we
was it.
had,
Yeah,
and I was just all just drawn to that turtle shot that you had because it was really amazing. Obviously, we ended up standing there for about 10 minutes talking.
So I get that all the time, and it's really really great. And it just, you know, even if people don't buy my images, it's just a bit of a, you know, an ego boost. You know, so
Yeah,
at least I'm doing the characters or the images, you know, justice. But sometimes I do get stuck for backgrounds, and you know that turtles one, for example. You know, the turtles are always kind of in a dark sort of area or scenario. Everything's very very dark
yeah,
with the turtles. So yeah, I just made a really plain backdrop, and it really popped. It really worked.
yeah. No, it was a really nice shot, that one.
Thank you.
So have you ever faced any unexpected reactions or responses to your photography? And if so, how have you dealt with them?
I've never had any negative photography. Uh,
Uh,
photography. I've never had any
Okay.
negative feedback, which is great. You know,
Yeah.
um, you know, like I just mentioned, you will get some people come up to the stalls and kind of, you know, snigger in a nice way, you know, not snigger in like, oh
Yeah.
my God, look at that. They kind of snigger and just kind of, you can see the glint in their eyes. Oh, that takes me back, you know. And some people are quite shy to come up to the table, so they kind of look at it from afar. But I've never really had any sort of negative feedback, which is great, because I
Yeah.
think if if people do, it kind of it does knock your confidence, you know. But
Yeah.
the fact that I
This
haven't
is
had any just kind of inspires you to make more, really.
Yeah, I think it also helps that you're in a scenario at like comic conventions where, everybody's there for the same reason that they're massive
Yeah,
geeks.
Yeah,
So like I think that kind of helped the scenario that you're in at the time kind of helps with that because everyone's there for the same thing really.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So that does help a lot, and especially if there's a lot of retro toy sellers around the booth as well, because there were a few at Reading that I noticed that
Yeah,
I kept hovering around. Um, but yeah, I think like I said, no negative feedback is always quite good. So you're saying obviously about the toys and that you use. Do you have a favorite series of toys to photograph? And if so, what makes them special to you to use for shots?
yeah. It's always going to be the Kenner line. I've watched so many documentaries on how they made the toys and how they nearly didn't make the toys. Um, I think they used Friar Tuck for the Gamorrean guards, so they were
Mm,
reusing toys as well. Um, so they were quite inspiring. So they're my favorite toy lines. I would probably say New Age are the Black Series. I think the Black Series Star Wars are absolutely incredible. They're not expensive, they're not cheap at the same time. You're probably looking at 20 to 30 quid
yeah,
for a decent figure. I went to a shop the other day and I saw one of the Black Series figures for a fiver. Obviously, it didn't sell very well, so I bought it off the shelf. But yeah, it's definitely the Kenner line and also the Karate Kid line as well. Remco.
okay, yeah,
Remco made some pretty straightforward Karate Kid toys, but yeah, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool.
yeah. How so? Obviously, we were saying obviously you tried to make the shots look as realistic as possible. How do you help balance the realism and the creativity in your shots?
Um, how do I create the balance? That's a really, really tough question, mate. That's a very, very tough question. Um, I think I'm pretty good at knowing when something doesn't work.
Yeah,
So uh, I always find my toy photography hard because I always want to do the whatever figure I'm taking a picture of. I want to do it justice,
yeah,
you know. Um, and if I can't do it, I probably will give up. But in like 6 months' time, I'll come back to it and
yeah,
try again. But I'll always try and make it work. And if it doesn't work, I'll always ask my brother, send him the pictures, send a couple of close friends the images, and say, "Look, do you think it works or not? Because if you don't think it works, then I'm not going to bother putting it on my
yeah.
website." But that's a tough question, mate. I hope I answered it correctly.
No, yeah. Any answer's an answer. I think that's probably one of the toughest questions I've got here anyway.
Definitely.
So you're saying obviously about when you're going into like Photoshop or anything like that. You said obviously you only really you'll sharpen them, or if they're a little bit crooked, you'll straighten them. Do you do any other After Effects into your shots, or do you just kind of
The
use what you have around you
I,
like
with
for the actual shot itself?
Yeah, for the vintage stuff, for the old school stuff, like the Karate Kid, the Star Wars old school toy line, I'm just trying to look at like the Star Trek and the Ghostbusters. Anything vintage, I will try not to use Photoshop. In fact,
Yeah,
99.9% of the time, I will not use Photoshop because I want that. It's the type of image that I want to create. I want it to be
yeah,
Photoshop free, and for people to go, oh, you've done that without Photoshop. Wow, look at that smoke. You haven't used Photoshop for that. The lighting, blah blah blah. But I do use Photoshop for my more modern um, toy line because I believe with the more modern stuff, I can get away with just adding in like a lightning bolt or
yeah,
a sandstorm just to bring it really to life. Really, there's a reason why I
yeah,
don't use Photoshop for the old stuff is because back in the day they didn't really have Photoshop. Nowadays, with the more accurate looking toys, yeah, I feel as if like that's just like free for all. So I use Photoshop as much as I can really,
okay,
to make the image really pop.
okay. And have you ever collaborated with any other artists or photographers on your shoots?
No, not yet, not yet. There is a guy who I think you might have seen him. He had a stall next to me at Reading Comic Con. He made lightsabers out of Lego, out of his own
Yes, yeah.
design. His name is Brick Hunter. I think it's something like Brick Hunter. I apologise, Brick Hunter, if that's not the
I
proper name.
think I have his. I think I have his
But,
business card up here. To be honest, no, I don't.
so at the end of
Oh
the
no,
show,
yeah, Demon Hunter bricks.
Demon Hunter Bricks, he came up to me at the end of the show, like an hour before it finished, and he said, "I really like your stuff. Do you want to do a collab?" And I was like, "Yeah, but cool. What, I know what you mean, but talk to me." And he said to me, "Well, take away this like Luke Skywalker lightsaber," and I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem at all. Build it. The instructions are on the inside. Just scan it, and it takes you to the website, and it gives you the instructions. Download it, build the lightsaber, and come up with like a familiar scene using the lightsaber. Using the Lego lightsaber." And I thought, wow, that's such a cool idea. So I have done one. It's when Darth Sidious is like sat down in his chair with the lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber next to him. I'm hoping to do a couple more for him. But yeah, that's the only kind of collaboration that I've done so far with another artist.
Okay.
I'm hoping to do some
And
more in the future. But yeah, what he's given me is quite out there. I can't wait to do more
yeah,
work.
yeah, and so to finish up the questions, what advice would you give to someone who might be interested and started in doing toy photography?
Yeah. Get yourself a fairly decent camera. Don't spend hundreds. Don't spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds. If you're new to toy photography or new to photography, obviously start off cheap. Try and buy some cheap effects like the smoke machine and the ice light. Definitely invest in Photoshop, and don't forget, focus in on those eyes. Put it, press this, press the button where you can see the image on the back of your camera. Zoom in and manual focus. Don't automatic focus because it won't work. Manual focus on the eyes, and it will make your photographs pop.
Okay. Yeah, because one of my friends who does do toy photography, he does a lot of with the Power Rangers Lightning Collection
Yeah,
line. He does it all with his phone. He does all of his shots of his phone, and he uses a lot of like natural backgrounds. So he'll go out to the park with a load of his figures,
yeah,
line them up how he wants them, and he'll just like sit there for a bit playing about with poses and
absolutely,
everything else like that. And he
absolutely.
like the shots that he does with just his phone are
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I've been outside before when it's been peeing down with rain, camera on the floor, peeing down with rain, trying to get these shots of one of the figures. So yeah, if you're going to do it properly. You might get a little bit wet. You might get loads of sand
Yeah.
in your toes. But just experiment. You can't go wrong really. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to sit down and chat with me. It was
No worries.
really interesting to see the behind the scenes side of toy photography, because I've seen as from my viewpoint of seeing the picture, but seeing the kind of understanding the creative process and everything that you guys do, and especially yourself, it's quite interesting to know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so where can people find your work?
Yeah, thanks. I'm on Etsy. I'm just about to hopefully go on Amazon. But yeah, my website, sidiousart.com or etsy.com. Just type in Sidious Art and you'll find loads of my work.
Okay.
All reasonably
Yeah,
priced as well.
I'll throw all of those links down in the description for everybody to be able to go and check out as well.
Cool.
And again, thank you for
No worries.
sitting down. And I want to thank everyone who has watched the video. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, hit the like button, share this out with other people who are fans of toy photography. And yeah, thank you everyone, and peace.